They told you Christmas is about Jesus. They told you Easter celebrates his resurrection. But what if I told you these holy days were never Christian to begin with? What if the most sacred Christian festivals are rooted in ancient pagan rituals, adopted, renamed, and repackaged by the church itself? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is real history. And once you hear this, you'll never see these holidays the same way again. Let's begin with Christmas. Millions celebrate the birth of Jesus on December 25th. But here's the truth. The Bible never says Jesus was born on that date. In fact, biblical clues suggest he was born in spring or fall, during the time shepherds were out in the fields. So why December 25? Because long before Jesus, ancient pagans celebrated the winter solstice around this same time, the darkest point of the year when the sun begins to return. This day was sacred. It was believed the sun god was reborn. In Rome, people celebrated Saturnalia, a week-long festival full of gift-giving, feasting, and public madness to honor Saturn, the god of time. They decorated homes with greenery and lights. Sound familiar? Later, when Christianity spread, church leaders realized something. They couldn't stop the people from celebrating these festivals. So they did the next best thing. They Christianized them. They said, Jesus is the true light of the world, and gave Saturnalia a new name, Christmas. They didn't erase paganism. They simply placed Jesus on top of it. Now let's talk about the Christmas tree. You won't find it in the Bible. In fact, the Bible warns against cutting trees, decorating them with gold and silver. But ancient Germanic and Norse cultures worshipped sacred trees, symbols of life and rebirth during the cold, dark months. The Yule tree, later called the Christmas tree, was a part of their winter solstice tradition. It symbolized hope and survival. And when Christianity moved into Northern Europe, this symbol wasn't banned, it was baptized. Today, millions decorate trees each December, unaware they're repeating a pagan offering ritual from centuries past. Now Easter, the holiest day in Christianity, right? The day Jesus rose from the dead. But again, the name Easter doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from Eostre, a fertility goddess worshipped in springtime. Her sacred symbols? The egg, representing birth, the rabbit, symbolizing fertility. Long before Jesus, people held spring festivals to honor this goddess and the return of life after winter. When Christianity entered Europe, the church absorbed this holiday and said, this isn't about a goddess, it's about the resurrection. But they kept the symbols, the eggs, the bunnies, the sunrise rituals. And to this day, they remain. Even Lent, the 40-day fast before Easter, mirrors ancient Babylonian and Egyptian mourning periods for dying and rising gods like Tammuz and Osiris. And what about Halloween? Did you know it was originally called Samhain, a Celtic pagan festival? People believed the spirits of the dead crossed into the world of the living on October 31st. They wore costumes to confuse demons, lit fires to protect themselves, and left food as offerings. When Christianity couldn't stop it, they renamed it All Hallows Eve, followed by All Saints' Day. But again, the customs remained. The church simply gave this pagan festival a Christian disguise. Even the day of worship changed. The biblical Sabbath is Saturday, the seventh day. But in the Roman Empire, Sunday was the day to honor the sun god Sol Invictus. When Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity, he shifted Christian worship to Sunday, blending Roman tradition with Christian faith. So now many believers worship on Sunday, a day named after a god they don't even follow. So what does all this mean? Are Christians wrong for celebrating these holidays? Not necessarily. But the truth is, these holidays are not purely Christian. They're a mix, a carefully crafted blend of ancient pagan ritual and new religious meaning. The church adopted these traditions not for purity, but for power, to convert more people, to control more regions, to unify a divided empire. Today, many believers follow these customs without knowing where they came from. They're told, this is how it's always been. But the truth is, Christianity didn't remove paganism, it married it. And unless we start asking questions, we'll keep worshiping on days designed for gods we don't believe in. Let's talk about baptism. Many see it as a purely Christian act, a symbol of rebirth and cleansing of sins. But the practice of ritual washing in water is far older than Christianity. Ancient Egyptians bathed in the Nile to purify themselves spiritually. In Babylon and Sumer, water symbolized renewal and rebirth. And in Jewish tradition, long before John the Baptist, mikvahs, ritual baths, were common. So while baptism holds deep Christian meaning today, the ritual itself came from earlier belief systems. Christianity didn't invent it, it redefined it. Now think about saints. You may know Saint Christopher, Saint Mary, Saint Anthony, but long before saints, pagans had patron gods and goddesses. Each protected certain cities, professions, or causes. In ancient Rome, if you wanted a safe journey, you prayed to Mercury. If you were sick, you called upon Asclepius, the half we don't believe in. Let's talk about baptism. Many see it as a purely Christian act, a symbol of rebirth and cleansing of sins. But the practice of ritual washing in water is far older than Christianity. Ancient Egyptians bathed in the Nile to purify themselves spiritually. In Babylon and Sumer, water symbolized renewal and rebirth. And in Jewish tradition, long before John the Baptist, mikvahs, ritual baths, were common. So while baptism holds deep Christian meaning today, the ritual itself came from earlier belief systems. Christianity didn't invent it, it redefined it. But the practice of ritual washing in water is far older than Christianity. Ancient Egyptians bathed in the Nile to purify themselves spiritually. In Babylon and Sumer, water symbolized renewal and rebirth. And in Jewish tradition, long before John the Baptist, mikvahs, ritual baths, were common. So while baptism holds deep Christian meaning today, the ritual itself came from earlier belief systems. Christianity didn't invent it, it redefined it. Now think about saints. You may know Saint Christopher, Saint Mary, Saint Anthony, but long before saints, pagans had patron gods and goddesses. Each protected certain cities, professions, or causes. In ancient Rome, if you wanted a safe journey, you prayed to Mercury. If you were sick, you called upon Asclepius, the god of healing. When Christianity replaced Roman beliefs, the church replaced gods with saints, each one filling the same role. Today, people pray to Saint Anthony to find lost things, Saint Jude for impossible causes, Saint Michael for protection. It mirrors ancient pagan practice, only the names changed. Ever notice church steeples? They look majestic, tall, pointing toward the heavens, but their origin is unexpected. Pagan temples often had obelisks, tall, pointed stone structures honoring gods like Ra or Baal. The church didn't destroy these forms, it repurposed them. Even the Vatican features an ancient Egyptian obelisk at its center, once used in pagan worship, now part of Christianity's most powerful place. And how about wedding rings? We wear them without question. But the circular ring as a symbol of eternity came from pagan Egypt, where it was worn on the left ring finger, believed to have a vein connected directly to the heart. Romans adopted the custom, and the church eventually allowed it, baptizing the practice into Christian marriage. Even the tradition of a bride wearing white, carrying flowers, or tossing rice, these all trace back to fertility and purity rituals from ancient pagan weddings. Candles, incense, holy water. They're used in churches today, but they were used in pagan temples thousands of years ago to create sacred space, to ward off evil, to invite divine presence. The rituals didn't disappear, they were absorbed. So why does this matter? Because people deserve to know what they're actually practicing. Millions today follow traditions passed down for generations. But those traditions often have nothing to do with Jesus or the Bible. They were inherited from ancient pagans, blended into Christianity by rulers and priests who wanted unity, not purity. This isn't about attacking faith. It's about uncovering the truth behind the curtain, asking what's cultural, what's spiritual, and what's inherited without question. Because when you know the truth, you're no longer just following blindly, you're choosing consciously. The cross. It's the most recognized Christian symbol in the world. But here's what many don't know. The cross was not originally a Christian sign. Long before Jesus, ancient civilizations like the Babylonians, Egyptians, and even early Europeans used cross-like symbols. In Babylon, the cross was linked to the god Tammuz, a dying and rising deity. In Egypt, the ankh, a cross with a loop on top, represented eternal life. The cross was already a sacred symbol when Christianity adopted it. Only now it was redefined to represent Christ's sacrifice. So the symbol wasn't invented by Christians, it was inherited and rebranded. Halos. Ever seen paintings of Jesus, Mary, or the saints glowing with golden circles behind their heads? That's a halo, a sign of holiness. But this glowing ring of light didn't originate in Christianity. Ancient Greeks used halos to show sun gods like Apollo. The Romans used it in their art to honor emperors who were seen as divine. In Mithraism, a religion popular in the Roman Empire before Christianity, followers drank wine and ate bread in honor of their god. So even this sacred Christian act has echoes of earlier religious feasts, reshaped into new meaning but built on ancient forms. Why does all this matter? Because most people never question the symbols and rituals they follow. But when you pull back the curtain, you realize much of what people think is purely Christian has deep pagan fingerprints. This isn't a theory, it's historical fact. Christianity didn't start from scratch. It grew by absorbing the powerful symbols, days, and practices of earlier faiths. Now you know the truth behind the halo, the cross, the Sunday gathering, and even communion. The question is, what else have we accepted without questioning?